Elara Voss did not cry when the bond broke. She had expected pain. Everyone said it was pain. A tearing, a ripping, something physical and immediate, like losing a tooth pulled from the root. What she felt instead was a sudden and complete silence. As if a sound she had been hearing her whole life, a low hum she had never noticed until it was gone, simply stopped. She stood in the throne room of Kael Ashborne's palace and listened to that silence. Around her, 300 people waited to see what she would do. She picked up her bag. She walked out. She did not look back, not because she was strong, because she knew that if she looked at him even once, the silence would become sound again, and she could not afford that. Not here, not in front of his council, his court, the woman with the dark hair and the political connections, who would take her place before the season changed. The boots she was wearing belonged to a kitchen maid named Rosie, who had slipped them to her the night before, saying nothing, just pressing them into her hands with the quiet understanding of someone who had seen how this story ended long before Elara did. She walked for 3 hours before she let herself sit down. The road east was flat and long and smelled of cold grass. She sat on a stone at the edge of it and pressed one hand to her chest, over the place where the bond scar was already forming, that particular kind of ache that was not quite pain, but would become pain later, when she was alone and there was nothing else to think about. She sat there for 7 minutes. Then she stood up, put the bag over her shoulder, and kept walking. That was 9 months ago. The Eastern Outpost had no proper name when she arrived. It was 3 buildings and a broken gate, and a small group of displaced Omega women, who had been running it on stubbornness, and very little else. Elara had used her grandmother's inheritance. Not much, but more than anyone expected, because no one in Kael's court had ever thought to ask about her grandmother, and she had rebuilt the gate first. Then the roof. Then the medical room, which became 2 medical rooms, which became the thing that drew people from 4 territories away, when their own healers had nothing left to offer. She did not name the outpost. The women who came to stay named it themselves. They called it Voss House. She did not tell them to stop. The morning the Alpha King's envoy arrived, Elara was setting a dislocated shoulder for a 17-year-old girl who had traveled 2 days on foot to reach them. The girl's name was Bryn. She had the specific kind of silence around her that came from having been very loud for a very long time, and learning, eventually, that it did not help. Elara knew that silence. She worked quickly, and did not make the girl talk. The envoy, a tall man in formal court colors who looked deeply uncomfortable, standing in a medical courtyard surrounded by women who had not invited him, waited 40 minutes before Elara came out. He handed her the letter. It was exactly what she had expected. Gilt edges. Royal seal pressed deep into red wax. Her name written in the court scribe's formal hand, the letters slightly too large, as if someone had instructed him to make it legible, and he had interpreted that as important. She turned it over once. She gave it back. "Tell him," she said, "that I was busy." The envoy blinked. He looked at the letter. He looked at her. The king requests." "I know what the king requests," she said pleasantly. "I'm not available." She went back inside. She thought about it that night, which she had expected. She had not expected how little of the thinking was about him, and how much of it was about the bond scar, which had stopped aching 3 months ago, and now simply existed, present, textured, a fact about her body that she no longer argued with. She had heard the stories, the way everyone heard them eventually, passed from healer to healer like a folded note. The royal bloodline fracturing, the council's panic, a genealogist's report that had apparently caused the Alpha King to sit alone in his study for the better part of a morning, which, for a man like Kael Ashborne, was as close to collapse as he was capable of. The Voss bloodline, her grandmother's bloodline. 400 years of history that his council had not thought to research, because they had been looking at titles, and they had not understood that the most significant things rarely come with documentation anyone thinks to check. She pressed her fingers to the scar, and felt nothing she did not expect. He needed the bloodline. Fine. He needed her specifically, biologically, in the way that ancient pack genetics occasionally produced a specific and irreplaceable lock and key between 2 people who might otherwise have had nothing to do with each other. Also fine. What he had done in that throne room was not fine. She closed her eyes, opened them, went to sleep. He came himself 3 weeks later. She had known he would. Not because she knew him, she did not really. 7 days in his court had shown her only the exterior of him, the formal silences, and the careful eyes, and the jaw that tightened when something surprised him. But because a man who had signed dissolution papers before sunrise was also a man who, when backed into a corner, would make the uncomfortable choice rather than the safe one. She had seen that in him even then. It was, she had once thought, the most interesting thing about him. He arrived without the court colors, civilian clothes, a dark coat, no visible guard, though she knew the guards were there, positioned at a distance that gave him plausible deniability about needing them. He stood in the courtyard and looked around at Voss House with an expression she could not immediately name. Not guilt, exactly. Something more uncomfortable than guilt. The face of a person confronting evidence. She came out and stood across the courtyard from him. He looked at her the way she had expected, searching, careful, the particular quality of attention that came from a man who had spent months thinking about what he would say and had just realized that none of it was the right thing. She waited. "Elara," he said. "Kael?" she said. The use of his name without the title cost him something. She watched it cost him. "I know why you're here," she said, before he could begin whatever speech he had prepared. "The bloodline." "Yes," he said. A pause. Then, "Also other things." "What other things?" He was quiet for a moment. Out in the yard behind her, she could hear Bryn helping the younger girls with the water carry, calling instructions in a voice that had gotten a little louder over the past 3 weeks, which was the right direction for it to go. "I haven't slept well," Kael said, as if this was relevant information, as if she had asked. "That's not my problem," she said. "No," he agreed, "it isn't." Another pause. He looked at the gate, her rebuilt gate, the new wood still slightly lighter than the old stone around it, and something in his face shifted in a way she could not track. "I understand now," he said, "what I actually severed." She looked at him. She had thought about this moment, not planned for it, not rehearsed any response to it, but thought about it in the way you think about weather coming, aware of it, watching it approach, not sure if it would pass or settle. "Those are 2 different problems," she said. "The bloodline and the rest of it, and only one of them is mine to solve." She went back inside. She did not slam the door. The quiet of a door closing gently was, she had learned, a great deal more effective. She made him stay for 3 days. Not from cruelty. She was not cruel. She was precise, which some people confused with cruelty because it did not soften things unnecessarily. But there was a difference, and she knew it. She made him stay because she needed to watch him exist without authority, before she made any decision. She needed to see if the man underneath the Alpha King was someone she could place any weight on, or if the king was all the way down, authority over nothing. He helped carry water on the 2nd day because no one told him not to, and Bryn, who was not afraid of anyone anymore, had handed him a bucket with a complete absence of ceremony. He carried it. He did not make a thing of it. Elara watched from the window of the medical room and noted this. On the 3rd day she came to him with a document. Not a counter-treaty, nothing with gilt edges or formal language, just a page she had written herself in her own handwriting, which was small and even and undecorated. She set it in front of him at the table in the common room, where the morning light came through poorly and the benches were slightly too low for someone his height. He read it. He read it twice, which she had not expected. The outpost charter, he said. The Voss clan recognition, the Dracon dissolution, he looked up, and the bond. Rebuilt, she said. Not restored. There is a difference. Restored means we go back to what existed in the throne room, which was one-sided, and based on biology, and nothing else. Rebuilt means we start from what is actually here, which is, she paused, complicated, and slow, and subject to my judgment at every stage. He was quiet. You have a kingdom that needs what I carry in my blood, she said. I am not interested in pretending that isn't true. What I am interested in is whether you are capable of understanding the difference between needing someone and valuing them. He looked at the document, he looked at her. "I don't know yet," he said. It was, she thought, the first completely honest thing he had said to her. "That," she said, "is the right answer." He signed the document. That was not the ending. The ending was 6 months later in the great hall of his palace, which she had returned to not as a maid-in-waiting, but as the formally recognized head of the Voss ancestral line, a title that his council had processed with the specific expression of men who had made a catastrophic miscalculation and could not say so out loud. She had her own seat at the table, her own people at the table. Bryn sat 2 chairs to her left, with the posture of someone who had decided that rooms like this were not as frightening as they appeared, which was a decision Elara had watched her arrive at over 6 months, and was prouder of than she could say. A border lord named Caston challenged her standing during a routine session. He was a thick-necked man with old alliances, and the particular confidence of someone who had never been genuinely wrong about anything in a room that mattered. He had barely finished his second sentence. Kael cut him off. Not loudly, not with the formal Alpha King language that filled the room like smoke and required everyone to stand slightly straighter, just, directly, a sentence and a half, the tone of a man who had already finished considering the question and found it settled. Caston sat down. The room rearranged itself in the way rooms did when the person at the center of them had made something clear. Elara did not look at Kael. She was aware of him the way she was aware of the bond, present, low, patient. She returned to the document in front of her and made 2 notes in the margin. That night she stood on the east balcony, which faced the direction she had walked 9 months ago in borrowed boots on a flat road that smelled of cold grass. The night was clear, not warm, but not cold either, the kind of evening that did not require anything from you. She heard the door behind her. She did not turn around. He came and stood beside her. Not close enough to require anything, not far enough to be absent, the right distance, which she noted was a choice he had learned to make correctly somewhere in the past 6 months, though she had not told him she was watching for it. They stood there for a while. The bond sat between them the way something rebuilding itself sits, fragile still, but no longer bleeding. She did not move away. He did not say anything. She did not say anything. Below them, the palace grounds were quiet. Somewhere past the east wall, past the road, past 4 territories and a broken old gate that had become something else, there were women learning to be loud again in the right direction. There was a girl named Bryn, who now walked into rooms like she had been invited. Elara thought about that. She let his shoulder stay where it was, an inch from hers, not quite touching, and close enough that the space between them was not empty. The bond hummed. Low. Patient. Like something that had always known it had time.